Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. This is a difficult episode for me to do because I promised, and I will live up to that promise, not to condemn any countries by name. But in this podcast episode, I think it will be obvious what I am talking about, but I will stand by my promise not to condemn countries by name. I will. Although I have to admit, listening to the news, reading the news, watching some of the commentary shows I watch on a regular basis on YouTube, it is very difficult. And I have to really, really try hard to stay focused on this so I don't break my promise. The crisis, the genocide in Gaza is getting worse and worse and worse. And the head of state of the provocateur, the country which is causing the crisis in Gaza, goes on television and insists that his country is providing tremendous aid to the Gazans. Why? Anybody with two eyes, or anybody with two ears, or even one eye and one ear, can tell that that is simply not true. So why tell those lies? The only thing I can imagine is that the head of state is primarily speaking to his fan base and to no one else. He cannot expect to persuade anybody else, such as me, to be tricked by him. And he knows that there are many people like that out there, such as me. 3 more countries have said that they will recognize Palestine as an independent state. And the head of state of that provocateur has condemned them for doing so. The majority of the members of the United Nations have recognized Palestine. But my own country refuses to do so and wants to see a negotiation. I mean, did my head somewhere get lost? How can there be a negotiation when you have a genocide? You cannot expect a country which is engaging in genocide to engage in good-spirited, faithful, truthful, honest negotiations to establish a Palestinian state. So it appears to me that although my country says that it wants a two-state solution, whereas I, as I have said in the past, support only a one-state solution, Palestine, and only Palestine, from the river to the sea. And I mean that literally, not metaphorically. Surely, my own country, the head of state, the leading politicians in my country, the members of both parties, both major parties, the American duopoly are largely in support of the activities going on right now in Gaza. They are supporting a genocide. Imagine living in the 20th century. Imagine if the US had known about all the dead bodies that were being stored in ovens after being killed in concentration camps and gas chambers. Imagine if that evidence existed. As it turned out, to the best of my knowledge, my own country, and in fact, no other country really, knew exactly what Adolf Hitler was doing. And so, in a sense, I suppose, my country can be excused because the leaders of the US did not know that at the time. What about now? What about now? What about now in 2024, when not only is there support for a genocide, there is a financing for a genocide. That financing includes money, and it also includes weapons. There is really no limit, it seems, to what my country and the actual provocateur can do, because we have no system of collective security in the world. Nothing like it, not even close. The UN can't stand up and say, well, we don't like what is happening right now in Gaza. We will force you to stop. All the nations of the world must arise and stop the activities of this genocide in Gaza. That is a fantasy. The present-day UN simply cannot do that. It does not have the power. It does not have the authority, which in sociology is a term for legitimate power. It does not have the legitimate power to do it, or even the illegitimate power. Even the illegitimate power. The UN cannot do that either. I'm not sure what illegitimate power would look like, but in other words, what can the United Nations do? What we are seeing is that the United Nations has been a failed experiment. It was started with certain very justifiable goals, especially after the Holocaust of Adolf Hitler. That was a just reason to start the UN, and I think that is primarily the reason why the UN was successful in being established, whereas the League of Nations, which was actually conceived in the US, was never established. Why? Because even though the US came up with the idea, the US would not join it. That is what happened in the early 20th century, in the years immediately following World War I. But right after World War II, after we saw all those bodies piled up in ovens, it was a different story. People all over the world were totally outraged by what they saw. I must say, amazed in retrospect that newspapers actually published those photos. Photos of dead bodies, emaciated bodies in ovens. I question whether that would happen today. Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. But I'm happy that those photos were published. I'm happy that the world got to bear witness to the misdeeds of the Third Reich. And yet now, where is the outrage? Where is the control over the party that is engaging in genocide? There is no control at all. Nobody seems willing, not to say able, but willing to put a stop to it. The one country which can, my own country, is not doing it. Could it? Of course it could. Of course it could, but it's not. As I've said before, like Roy Bhaskar, the founder of critical realism, I believe in a kind of karma, not exactly the type of karma which is a part of Hinduism, which is related to the Hindu doctrine of transmigration, also called metempsychosis, which basically says that if you behave badly in this life, you might be reincarnated in a lower caste, or you might be transmigrated into an animal, even a cockroach, perhaps. That's not what I mean. I don't know if Roy Bhaskar believed that. If so, he never said it, to my knowledge. I'm simply talking about cause and effect. As you sow, so shall you reap. So, that is my concern. I am living in the belly of the beast, or one of the two bellies of the beast, that is funding or executing a genocide in Gaza. And so the karma, without any concept of transmigration or metempsychosis or reincarnation, is, I think, inevitable. It will happen sooner or later. Karma, as I use the term, as I've said before, is, I think, one of the ways in which the mechanism of the dialectic manifests itself in the world. As you sow, so shall you reap. The only question in my mind is when? When? Am I afraid? Am I afraid of what may happen to my country? The karmic punishment or karmic debt that my country is accruing, which I think will eventually lead to horrible consequences, perhaps even the destruction of my country and the destruction of the country that is actually executing the war. Am I afraid? Because I live here? No. I am not afraid at all. What I am afraid of, I am afraid of the daily lives that the Gazans are being forced to endure. And why? Land? Money? I don't know. Hate? Calling Gazans Nazis of all things? So, no, I'm not afraid for myself. I can't even say that I'm afraid for my country because, as I've said, I do believe in a kind of collective punishment, even though I and people that I know are not directly involved in supporting this genocide. I live here. And the fact that I live here, I think, makes me culpable. It makes me culpable. And I deserve to die. I deserve to die with the rest of people in this land that I inhabit. Am I happy about that? No. Because not because I am afraid of the consequences, afraid of the karmic debt, but because I know that the karmic debt is being accrued as a direct result of my own country actively supporting a genocide right now. Right now. This is not history. This is news. Talking about Hitler and the Third Reich, that is news. That is history. But this is just news. It is not history. It will be history, I assume, at some time in the future, perhaps when the capitalist world system has fallen, and with it, the first world, and then as a Maoist third worldist, as I hope, the third world, the developing world, and the fourth world, or indigeneity, will rise up to stage revolutions to establish revolutionary socialism or communism. That is what I hope for. That is the thing I cling to because I can't cling to anything else. If there is something else in world affairs, I am not talking about spiritually. I am talking about concrete things that are happening on the ground right now. What else do I have to cling to except, I don't know what to call it, dialectical vengeance, karmic vengeance? And I think it will come. It is a matter of time. What saddens me, I suppose, more than anything else, is that it is taking so long for that karmic debt to be paid. Why is it taking so long? I don't know. I see the dialectic as a causal mechanism of nature, one that operates according to its own plans and decree. I have no power over it. I have no power over the weather either. That is also a mechanism of nature. But this is a dialectical mechanism of nature, meaning it is, in this case, a direct result of first world imperialism, which is the primary contradiction in the capitalist world system. And I really don't know what to do or what to say. It is difficult for me to go by day, but yet I do. I mean, I drove over to what they call here in Texas, the local Department of Taxation, and got my car registration renewed, put the sticker on my windshield. So I'm going about my affairs. I am living my life pretty much the way I have always lived it. The genocide in Gaza is not hurting me. When I think about it, when I do these podcast episodes, that is when it hurts me. But for most of the day, I am fine. I am fine. And yet, I do feel like a destroyed human. I think we should all feel like destroyed humans. If in fact we are humans, meaning Homo sapiens with humanity, we should feel broken by the events in Gaza and by the fact that 3 more countries are about to recognize Palestine, and the aggressor country, the head of the aggressor country, which I will not name, as per my promise, is condemning them, attacking them, and accusing them of all things. Anti-Semitism? It is not anti-Semitism. It is anti-imperialism. It has nothing to do with the fact that the aggressor country is made up of a Semitic people and others. That is not the point, but it makes a good line. It makes a good cover. It is a way of excusing one's actions and trying to prevent perhaps some people who are afraid of being, I guess, labeled anti-Semites, or in my case, I guess, self-hating Jews, even though I left Judaism as a religion when I was 14 years old. I guess I am still Jewish in an ethnic sense, but still, I am not self-hating. I love myself. For the last 20 years, since I had that experience with Horia, with the maiden, that visionary experience where she gave me the empathy, which I can express right now, where she gave me the intersubjectivity, the love, and the heart, which again, I can express right now. That is what it is. It is heart. It is feeling. It is love. And it seems to me that in the world today, love is a missing commodity. There is not that much love in the world. People may love their own families, maybe, although even families are splitting apart and have for a long time. People may love their communities or their nations, as they say, if that is in fact true. And sometimes I question that. I question whether that is true when I see how people are behaving. I mean, if people in my country are behaving the way that they are, supporting a genocide, do they really love the United States? Maybe in some warped way, but only in a warped way. I can't think of any other manner in which love for America, for the United States, is being expressed, except in a distorted and twisted way of killing a third world and a fourth world or indigenous culture, wiping out an entire culture. The vast majority of homes in Gaza have been destroyed. So when the war ends, where will these people go? They have nowhere to go. And so we are, I think, living in a collective nightmare. I have always believed that the capitalist world system would fall. I entertained various scenarios for how it would happen. I thought of this and that and all sorts of different possibilities. This was actually one of them. This was actually one of them. A genocide in the Palestinian territories, with my own country supporting that genocide. The most powerful country with the most powerful military, the wealthiest country in the world, supporting and, in effect, condoning a genocide without saying as much. But in reality, does the U.S. support the genocide in Gaza? Yeah, of course it does. Because if it did not, if my country, if the leaders of my country had a heart, they could call upon the genocide to stop. And it would stop. I think. Or my own country could recognize Palestine, which now seems like a pipe dream to me, but it could. My own country could recognize Palestine. And where that goes after that, I don't know. As I said, I believe in a Palestine from the river to the sea, but even a recognition of Palestine now would be something. I am not a progressive, so I don't believe in gradualism. I reject gradualism as a path toward revolutionary socialism or communism. But still, looking at the state of the world right now, anything which would give some peace, some comfort, some solace to those tortured Palestinians in Gaza would be fine with me right now. Will that happen? I don't think so. So, where do I think we are? And I admit this is only my speculation. In my view, we are at the end of the capitalist world system. We are at the end of the first world in its present form. This is the end. Maybe in a religious sense, although I don't mean it exactly in a religious sense, this is the time of the end. This is the time of the end. If you want to use kind of a, I guess, a political eschatology, the theology of end times, well, I guess here it is not the theology of end times, it is the history, the ongoing history of end times. And so I do think that we are living in the end times. But again, I mean that in a very precise sense. The end of the first world. The end of my own country in its present form. Not necessarily the end of my country entirely. That I don't know. But the end of the power of my country to dictate to the world what it should do, and to have the ability to veto protests against Israel in the UN. That is what I think will end. And that is karma. That is karmic debt. We have accrued a lot of it in the last 6 to 7 months in this world, and in the United States, and in the aggressor country. A lot of karmic debt has been accrued. And I don't think personally, and this is again only my own personal feeling, I don't think that there is any more room for additional karmic debt. I don't see where it can go. So I believe that, again, something is about to happen. Something has concluded. What that is, I don't know exactly. But something has concluded already. What it may be, and again, this is purely speculation, is that the ability of the world to manage itself, to run its own affairs, has totally spun out of control. It has been heading in that direction for a long time, but I think we have finally reached it. So I think that the world as we knew it is no longer the world that we live in right now. And we are now faced with the prospect of the end. The conclusion first, the end second. When that end will be, I don't know, but in my humble opinion, it will be pretty soon. Pretty soon. And I fear for all the people in the third and fourth world who will have a tremendous burden placed upon them to build something new. It is not a burden that I would want for myself, because I don't know how I would do it. I would like to, but I don't know. But somehow I think the people in the third world and in the fourth world will have power thrust upon them suddenly in the not too distant future, and will be forced to contend with a whole bunch of issues that up till now have been dealt with by my own country, by NATO, and to a lesser extent, perhaps, by the United Nations. For the time being, this has been Mark, by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.